So now let's continue to the next interesting topic, which our next speaker are going to deliver in the topic of beyond pipeline unlocking your DevSecOps strategy. For those who are interested to this topic, please feel free to come and have a seat right in front of the stage. We have many of available seats that waiting for all of you. So now here, join me in welcoming a Chief Technology Officer of NFQ up on the stage. A big round of applause to welcome Mr. Ludovic Toison.
The first question I like to ask is, how can we build secure software as developers, as architects, as product manager? And the second question I would like to address during this session is, how can we balance security and development speed? Right? As part of building software, we like to have this velocity, developing fast. But how can we balance this changing approach when we also need to integrate security as part of these development processes? My name is Ludovic. I'm working as a CTO at NFQ. We are a consulting firm specialized in software development, data platform, cybersecurity, and I'm very glad to be with you to share about DevSecOps strategy and how we implement that in our teams. All right? When we build a software, actually, it's a little bit like if you were going on a walk, right? You have a series of activities, a series of steps you have to follow. You usually start by designing your software, understanding the needs, defining the functionalities, defining what is going to look like your software. Then you start to write the code, to develop the features, to implement the data structure. Ultimately, you will test it, and you will release it. Right? This is a very standard approach that I'm sure most of you are aware of. At some point after that, you might run through a security audit for some reason, right? Maybe it will happen, maybe you will never do it, depending on the company, depending on your clients, depending on your industry or the criticality. These security audits may happen or may never happen, right? When it happens, it's usually because, you are entering a due diligence process. Someone is interested in what you're doing and they want to have some guarantee. Does your software is secure? Have you followed the best practices? This is a question that usually motivates the interest in conducting security audits. It may also happen that you are entering a compliance process. You would like your platform to be certified, ISO 27001, SOC 2. And as part of this compliance process, you usually have to conduct a security audit and to show the results. It may happen that some clients, they are requesting you before they buy your solution to have some guarantee as well. In the worst case, it also may happen that you conduct these security audits because you have a security incident. And of course, it's not the best scenario to conduct such a security audit. All in all, what is not so great about that, it's usually when you do a security audit after your software has been released, usually it's too late. It's way too late, right? Because you may already have some vulnerabilities that can be exploited on your software. And as well, the remediation effort will be quite high, right? Once I have a software live with clients that are using it, fixing, patching, adjusting is not cheap. It will cost time, effort, I might break things. It's not the best scenario. So ultimately, when we do a security audit too late in this stage, this is not awesome, right? So what could we do instead? What are our alternatives approach? One possibility could be basically to do a little bit of like what we call shifting left, right? Instead of conducting this security audit late in the process, I will try to move some of the parts in my implementation phase during the development effort in order to be able to fix early what's going on, right? This is what we call automation or pipelines. Usually it involves different activities, right? First, I would like to analyze the dependencies contained in my software. Today, we are pulling a lot of dependency when we build softwares, right? We are pulling dependencies, libraries, components that we don't own. They can contain potentially vulnerabilities. One way to ensure that is to run what we call software composition analysis. I will inspect the dependency automatically and I will be notified in case one of them is containing a vulnerability. The second activity is to conduct static application security testing, SAST. I will use a tool that will analyze my source code from a static perspective by identifying some pattern that might contain vulnerabilities, whether it's an SQL injection, XSS injection, improper data validations, secrets available. This tool will help me to understand as a developer if my code contains vulnerabilities in the way I write lines of code. Another aspect is also to detect secrets in my code base. You would be surprised, but today it's not uncommon that in some code base there is API keys, password, certificates that are directly contained in the source code and that are offering a huge vulnerabilities for any attacker. It also happens. And finally, when we want to automate, we might want as well to run a DAST, Dynamic Application Security Testing. I will deploy a version of my running software, probably on a staging environment, and I will have a series of automation tools that will conduct some testing on the endpoints. I will run some HTTP discovery. I will forge some SQL queries. I will replay some HTTP requests. I will forge arbitrary payloads in the HTTP body. And depending on the reaction of the software, I will be able to detect potential vulnerabilities. This can be automated into a pipelines. How does it look like? Basically, in a very high-level perspective, this is how the process should look like. I have my code repository that stores basically my code, right? And I will run a couple of automated checks using an orchestrator, whether it's Jenkins, GitLab CI, CircleCI, GitHub Actions, whatever. You choose the tool. It's not really important. And in this tool, you will define a series of actions, steps you would like to conduct to automate this aspect. I will check if my code base contains secrets. I will check if my code base is relying on dependencies that are vulnerable and that could offer potentially an entry point for attackers. I will check as well if my code base contains vulnerabilities, wrong patterns, proper invalidation, problem with, for example, serialization. Once everything is done, I can package my image, right? Today, the code base is usually running inside a Docker container. And then again, I will run a vulnerability assessment on this image. When we package a code base inside a container, the container is running on the base image, who may also contain vulnerabilities. And most of the time, we are using an image that we have not properly built on our own. We also need to inspect that. This is the purpose of 3V as a vulnerability management for containers. In the later stage, I will deploy, for example, my application in a staging environment, and I will run automatically a series of tests using DAST, right? Whether it's OWASP Zeta Proxy or Burp Suites, there is a way you can automate some scenarios to play with your dynamic application, play with the HTTP endpoints, the forms, filling out some arbitrary values, replaying HTTP calls, trying to connect and to scrap basically the response that is given to me by the application. And by that, I am able to assess whether if my application contains some basic vulnerability. Okay? Once all these steps are complete, I can natively move to production and get an approval. Okay, so this is basically how we could implement a shifting left strategy to automate that during the development activities. Of course, there is a couple of challenges, right? When you do that, you have to deal with false positive, right? It's a little bit annoying, but you might have results that describe a vulnerability that actually does not exist. You will need to spend time to investigate, to make sure this is correct or not. This is something you need to pay attention. More problematic, you may have as well false negative. There is a vulnerability, no tool has detected it, and you may have the feeling that you feel safe. So you need always constantly to challenge what you have in place. Never a tool will replace a manual assessment about what's going on the system. Okay, so we cannot just buy a couple of software and go to sleep hoping that we have solved all the problems. This is pretty unlikely to happen. Okay? And the final step as well is that it will increase the pipeline build time, right? Because I am generating a series of extra steps. Of course, building software will take a little bit longer than when I don't have all these steps. This is something we need to be considered as well, and how we orchestrate basically these pipelines. All right? When I speak about DevSecOps to some companies, usually they stop there and they say, look, this is our DevOps strategy. Of course, this is not enough, right? So here it's important to support the adoption via workshops to understand how we use the tool, how we collaborate, how do we handle the next steps. And it's important as well to deploy what we call vulnerability management. So basically we are going to deploy a tool, and all the reports will be sent to this vulnerability management platform that the team will manage, allocate, follow up, fix the vulnerabilities in order to be sure that everything is understood, controlled, and ultimately fixed. Okay? Of course, this is not enough, right? The second pillar when we deploy a DevSecOps strategy is also to harden the operation teams, to provide the tooling, the processes, the structure that will help as well to operate the infrastructure, right? How do we do that? Basically, we are going to start by also scanning basically the way we build the infrastructure. Today, we are using a pattern called infrastructure as code. I write code to dynamically build my infrastructure. Whether you're using CDK, Terraforms, Ansible, you need to check that as well. You need to make sure that when you write your infrastructure as code, you don't introduce misconfigurations, problems, vulnerabilities. So it needs to be scanned. You might want as well to deploy policy as code. You would like to forbid the ability to create resources that don't fit with your principle of security. You should not be able to create public instances, for example, or you don't want to have direct access to internet. You would like to have a bastion. Depending on the company you operate, it's possible to have this policy as a code that will enforce basically the way you create your resources on your cloud infrastructure. The third aspect as well is to run infrastructure scanning on the running infrastructure. I have built my server, it's running somewhere, but for some reason someone touched the configuration and is exposing some vulnerable informations, whether it's a version, unupdated plugins, a misconfiguration about a roof path. All of this I want to be alerted, so we have to run additional scanning for that. And finally, I need as well to continuously monitor what's going on. It's not because I have configured and deployed everything correctly that I can just ignore what is happening. So I need to have proper observability to receive security events and to be able to react to them. All right? How does it look like in high-level perspective again? I have my code repository containing my infrastructure. I will analyze and build it, making sure there is no secret exposed, making sure that the infrastructure is secure, that I don't have misconfiguration, vulnerabilities in the pattern I'm using, or in the models. Then I will deploy, for example, my production or my staging. I will assess this infrastructure by scanning it. Do I deploy the correct version? Is it outdated? Did I forget something? Do I expose too much information? And then I will have these monitoring steps, this observability that will receive event of security and on which I will be able to have proactive alerts. Okay? So hardening ops, it's really about onboarding the operations with this security context that most of the time they not always have. Okay? It's challenging because suddenly you have to establish this security incident response. Not all operation team know how to react in case you have a crisis. Okay? Usually, the processes, they don't exist. You need to invest in that, right? And of course, sometimes when an incident happens, the responsibility between the dev and the ops is not very clear. I have a security incident, but who has the knowledge? Is it on the software? Is it on the server? Is it on the network? Is it on the cloud infrastructure? Is it an account on the platform? It's really complicated when you have a security incident to understand who has the knowledge, what is the scope, and this is important to clarify as well as part of these operational procedures, the collaboration between the dev and the ops. Okay? So a couple of recommendations. It's important to conduct some exercise, tabletops. You don't have to generate security incidents. You can just sit with everybody one afternoon and you generate a couple of simulations. We have lost these databases. What is happening? This account is compromised. Who is reacting? What do we do? Who do we call? What are the measures that we establish to make sure it doesn't propagate? You can just sit together and you will be very, very surprised by the way the team is reacting. You will be able to identify the limitations, the flaws, and hopefully you will be able to fix them. It's super effective, and this is something we usually do when we want to apply for SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certificate. I highly recommend as well to have a couple of security youth from time to time. Involve someone outside of this team. Ask for help. Ask for someone who is not on a daily basis working on this platform, on this software, to run a review and to assess that everything is working as expected. This is my best recommendation. Okay? Is it the last part of the DevSecOps approach? Of course not. I think the last pillar, of course, is to nurture a security culture within the organization. We have now the development teams that is equipped with tooling. We have the ops teams that know how to operate. But what about the rest of the organization? It's great to build a vault, to build a secure platforms, but if your users, if the leadership team, if the customer support team is not aware about that, you lose a little bit the whole approach. So it's important to onboard as well the organization with a proper education and culture. There is different way of doing that. First one is to come back to the dev and operation teams. When the organization is scaling, and we don't have still a lot of resources in terms of security, we can build what we call security champions program. I have different teams that are working on different parts of my systems. Dev team 1, dev team 2. I have my operation teams that is maintaining the infrastructure. I cannot afford to have a ton of security experts. Today, maybe I have like 2 security experts in my organization. What I can do is that I can use this as an opportunity to have representative of the security team in each of these teams. This is what we call the security champion program. We will identify a couple of talented people that are interested in security. They will keep doing their job. They will remain focused on development or operation, but they will be able to conduct some cross-functional initiatives. They will be able, on behalf of the security team, to conduct maybe the first level of escalation. We will conduct some trainings. We will provide them some resources. They will run some improvement on the system, on their respective scope. This is a way as well, in a cost-effective way, to educate, support the development and the operation team in adopting a higher security posture. Another approach as well that we usually do in our company is to organize Capture the Flag challenges, CTF. Basically, one afternoon or one day every month, we are organizing a small event that is called the Capture the Flag. It's a competition, a challenge, when the team will have to hack into a system. They have to solve a challenge. And of course, the team that managed to do that win the challenges. They don't earn money in our company. It will mostly be like a couple of beers and pizza, but still, it helps to generate motivation, to think out of the box, and to create this culture awareness, this security awareness within the teams. It's very easy to organize. You have a lot of open source platform that you can use. You can book for a couple of $100, and you have a fresh sandbox environment that you can give out to your teams. It's also possible as well to run bug bounty programs. This is something we do with a couple of clients. In a bug bounty program, you will open basically your platform and security researcher, bug bounty hunter, pen tester, they will try to figure out vulnerabilities in your systems. And in exchange, once you have validated that this is actually a critical vulnerabilities and you have fixed that, you will be able to reward them, right? Usually it's a little bit of money. It can be some privilege as well. This is something easy to implement, cost effective as well, and it can participate to elevate the security culture of your organization. All right? So to summarize, when we think about DevSecOps in general, yes, we should probably focus on shifting left, but this is not the end. It's only the beginning. We need as well to involve our operation teams by having hardening on their sites, provide the tooling, provide the training, the procedures, provide as well the collaboration with the dev teams to operate the platform in a secure way. And finally, we also need to onboard basically the rest of the organization by nurturing this security culture. Thank you very much for your attention. Before I end, I would like to share with you two books that I think are super interesting, that really illustrate basically the DevSecOps principles. The first one is just DevSecOps by Glenn Wilson. It's a very good book that illustrates the way we can deploy a DevSecOps strategy within an organization. And the second is a white paper that is provided by the DoD, so the US DoD. They have worked for many years about DevSecOps approaches. You can find it online. It's a PDF of 50 pages. Very interesting as well, in case you would like to deep dive on DevSecOps approaches. Thank you very much for your attention. I will remain here a little bit later. If you have questions, we can have a coffee. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the conferences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would like to receive your feedback. So our team are going to display the QR code for the conference survey before we are going to continue to the next interesting session. Also, if you would like to check on our conference program, you can check on the official website or the event CyberSec Asia, and also that you can scan the QR code right in the back of your badge. เมื่อสักครู่นี้นะคะทางด้านของคุณ Ludovic Toison นะคะก็ได้พูดถึงเรื่องของการยกระดับนะคะกับกลยุทธ์นะคะของ DevSecOps ค่ะซึ่งเป็นกลยุทธ์ที่เราจะนำเอามานะคะใช้ให้เกิดประสิทธิภาพสูงสุดไม่ใช่แค่ในเรื่องของการเพิ่มขั้นตอนความปลอดภัยนะคะใน pipeline อย่างเดียวแต่ว่าต้องมีการบูรณาการนะคะในเรื่องของขั้นตอนนะคะกับ SDLC นะคะสำหรับการพัฒนาซอฟต์แวร์ตั้งแต่ต้นจนจบนะคะให้เกิดเป็นการบูรณาการนะคะแบบเต็มรูปแบบค่ะจะพูดถึงนะคะตัวของ Shift Left เองเนี่ยเป็นแค่จุดเริ่มต้นหรือว่าเป็นเพียงแค่ส่วนหนึ่งเท่านั้นนะคะไม่เพียงพอต่อการบูรณาการทั้งระบบนะคะแล้วก็ไม่ครอบคลุมในการป้องกันหรือว่า detect ในด้านอื่นๆด้วยนะคะเพราะฉะนั้นนะคะในเรื่องของการเทรนนิ่งการพัฒนาสกิลศักยภาพนะคะบุคลากรแล้วก็การทำงานร่วมกันนะคะของทีม Dev นะคะก็จะต้องมีนะในโปรแกรมที่สามารถที่จะช่วยตอบโจทย์ในเรื่องของการพัฒนาซอฟต์แวร์ที่ปลอดภัยตั้งแต่ต้นนะคะแล้วก็จะช่วยในการที่จะลดความเสี่ยงลดต้นทุนเพิ่มความเชื่อมั่นให้กับองค์กรได้อีกด้วยค่ะเพราะฉะนั้นนะคะนี่ก็ถือว่าเป็นหนึ่งเซสชันที่น่าสนใจถ้าเกิดใครมีคำถามสงสัยเพิ่มเติมนะคะสามารถที่จะไปคุยกับวิทยากรได้ส่วนตัวเลยนะคะ